I am on a death list. Marry me and give me an heir.
I was scrubbing blood from the throne room floor when the dying Alpha King grabbed my wrist and whispered, "I'm on death list. Marry me and give me an heir." I stared at Brett Pearson, the most powerful wolf in 5 kingdoms, the legendary warrior who'd never lost a battle, and watched him cough up black blood that burned holes in the marble where it landed. He thought I was nobody. Just Constance Hills, the Omega cleaner who emptied his chamber pots and washed his sheets. He had no idea that every night for the past 3 months, I'd been sneaking into his room while he slept, using healing magic I wasn't supposed to possess to push back the curse that was killing him inch by agonizing inch. He didn't know that touching him hurt me, that the dark magic wrapped around his heart tried to consume my light every time I got close. He definitely didn't know that I was the illegitimate daughter of the High Priestess, trained in forbidden healing arts and sent to the palace specifically to discover who was murdering the Alpha King from the inside. And he absolutely had no clue that the insignificant Omega he just proposed to was the only person in the kingdom powerful enough to either save his life or end it with a single touch. "Why me?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer would break my heart. "Because you're nobody," Brett said, his golden eyes dimming with the curse's poison. "No political connections, no family demands, no risk of civil war when I die. You'll give me an heir, and when the curse finishes killing me, the council can dispose of you quietly without international incident. It's perfect. Perfect." He thought marrying me and making me watch him die was perfect. If only he knew that I'd been keeping him alive for months. That the curse was designed by someone in his own council. That I was already pregnant with his twins, conceived through magic during one of my healing sessions when our souls had touched and the impossible had happened. And that in trying to save him, I'd accidentally bound myself to him so completely that if he died, the curse would consume me too. Yes, I heard myself say, "I'll marry you." Not because he'd asked, but because I just felt the curse shift, recognizing my healing magic for the first time, and I had maybe 3 days before it adapted enough to kill us both. 3 days to figure out which council member was murdering the Alpha King. 3 days to break an ancient curse I barely understood. 3 days to tell the man I'd been secretly healing that the insignificant Omega he was using as a political pawn was carrying his heirs and was the only thing standing between him and death. This was going to end in either a wedding or a funeral, possibly both. An Omega cleaner hiding immense healing power, a dying Alpha King who thinks she's nobody, and a curse that just realized she's been interfering, who's taking bets on survival. Skull Sparkles, drop your predictions and smash that subscribe button because this marriage proposal is actually an assassination plot, and Constance is about to discover that healing the Alpha King has consequences she never imagined. I was on my knees scrubbing blood from the throne room floor when the Alpha King collapsed 6 feet away from me, coughing up darkness that burned holes in the marble. This was the 3rd time this week. The curse was accelerating. I kept my head down, my movements slow and deliberate, the perfect picture of an insignificant Omega cleaner going about her duties. Around me, council members shouted for physicians, guards rushed to Brett's side, and chaos erupted in the carefully controlled political theater that was the royal court. But I could feel it. The dark magic wrapped around Brett's heart like a parasitic vine, squeezing tighter with each passing day. 3 months of my secret healing sessions had bought him time, but we were running out of delays. The blood binding was designed to look like natural illness while being anything but natural. Someone in this room was murdering the Alpha King, and they were getting impatient. "Clear the chamber." Elder Corrin's voice cut through the chaos, his military authority making even panicked nobles obey. "His Majesty needs space. Everyone except council and essential personnel." I started to gather my cleaning supplies, ready to disappear, as I always did. But Brett's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength for someone who'd just been dying. "Not you," he rasped, his golden eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Stay." Every council member turned to stare at me. The invisible cleaner. The nobody who'd just been ordered to remain by the Alpha King himself. This was bad. Very bad. I'd spent 4 years being unnoticed, and now I was the center of attention in a room full of predators and at least one murderer. "Your Majesty," Elder Helena said carefully, "perhaps you should rest before making any decisions." "I'm dying," Brett interrupted bluntly, pulling himself up to sit despite the blood still staining his lips. "We all know it. The physicians can't explain it, the treatments aren't working, and I have maybe weeks before whatever this is finishes killing me." The council members exchanged glances, some concerned, some calculating, all political. "Which means," Brett continued, his voice gaining strength despite his obvious pain, "I need to secure succession before I'm gone. I need an heir." More glances. Elder Corin stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we've discussed possible political marriages. Lady Seraphina of the Eastern Territories would trigger a succession war the moment I die," Brett finished. "Her family would claim my heir has Eastern blood rights. The Western Territories would object. We'd have civil war within months. Then Lady Victoria from same problem. Every noble family with a daughter sees my death as opportunity to claim power through my heir." Brett's grip on my wrist tightened. "I need someone with no connections, no political ambitions, no family to exploit my child for territorial gain. Oh no. Oh moon goddess, no." I knew where this was going and I needed to stop it before. "Someone like her," Brett said, looking directly at me. "What's your name?" "Constance," I managed, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "Constance Hills, Your Majesty." "Family? Pack affiliation?" "None, Your Majesty. Orphan raised in temple charity. No connections." The lie came easily after 4 years of practice. Technically accurate. I was temple raised and had no official connections beyond my hidden identity as the High Priestess's bastard daughter. Perfect. Brett released my wrist and addressed the council. "I'll marry Constance Hills. Immediately. She'll give me an heir, and when I die, the council can dispose of her quietly without triggering political complications. Simple, clean, no risk of civil war." The throne room erupted in protests. "Your Majesty, you can't be serious. An Omega cleaner as queen? The nobles will." "This is madness." "This is strategy," Brett interrupted, his alpha command silencing the objections.
"I'm dying."
"We need an heir. Political marriages create problems. Marrying nobody solves those problems. Unless any of you have better suggestions?" Silence. Because he was right strategically. A powerless Omega Queen posed no threat to anyone's ambitions. They could humor the dying king's desperate choice, then eliminate the inconvenient wife after she'd served her purpose.
Perfect plan. For everyone except me.
I should have refused. Should have run. Should have done anything except meet Brett's desperate, dying gaze and see the man I'd been secretly healing for 3 months, the Alpha King who thought he was asking a stranger to bear his child when I was already pregnant with his twins through magical conception. Why would I agree to this? I asked, buying time to think. "Because you're an Omega cleaner with no prospects," Brett said bluntly. "I'm offering you temporary status as queen, wealth during our marriage, and security even after I'm gone. The council will provide for you, won't you, elders?" "Of course, Your Majesty," Elder Corin said smoothly, though his eyes promised elimination rather than security. "The kingdom takes care of its own. So, what do you say, Constance Hills?" Brett's voice dropped lower, meant for only me to hear, though the room was silent enough that everyone caught it anyway. "Marry me. Give me an heir. Let me die knowing my bloodline continues." I felt the curse pulse through our contact, dark magic recognizing my healing light for the first time since I'd been carefully suppressing my power. It was adapting, learning, preparing to consume both of us now that marriage would create a soul bond. 3 days. Maybe less. But also, twins already growing inside me. Magic heirs that would reshape kingdom power structures. Truth that would get me killed if revealed before I broke the curse and identified the murderer. Yes, I said, sealing both our fates. I'll marry you. The council members tried to hide their satisfaction. They thought they'd just witnessed a desperate dying king making a convenient choice. They had no idea they'd just put the kingdom's most powerful healer in position to destroy their carefully orchestrated murder plan. Elder Corin especially looked pleased, which confirmed my worst suspicion. The military advisor who'd served 2 generations of Alpha Kings was probably the one killing this one. Excellent, Brett said, releasing my wrist and standing with effort. We'll hold the ceremony this evening. Elder Tobias can officiate. The rest of you, prepare announcements, organize the minimum necessary witnesses, and handle whatever political fallout this creates. I want it done quickly and quietly. Your Majesty, Elder Vivian spoke up, her diplomatic mind clearly working overtime. Perhaps we should delay a few days? Give the kingdom time to adjust to the announcement? There will be questions about the bride's background, her suitability. I don't have days, Brett interrupted. Look at me, Vivian. I'm coughing up blood that burns marble. I barely made it through this council meeting. If we delay, I'll be dead before the ceremony, and this whole plan becomes pointless. He wasn't wrong. The curse was accelerating faster than I'd anticipated. My nightly healing sessions were no longer enough to contain it. I needed to break the magic entirely, and soon. This evening, then, Elder Tobias agreed, his priest's robes rustling as he stood. I'll prepare the ceremony. Moon Goddess willing, we'll see His Majesty properly wed before. He caught himself. Before sunset, the council dispersed, leaving me alone in the throne room with Brett and the spreading puddle of his blood I'd been interrupted from cleaning. You can drop the act now, Brett said quietly once the door closed. They're gone. What act? I kept my voice carefully neutral. The terrified Omega Act. You said yes too quickly, with too much calculation in your eyes. He studied me with that tactical intelligence that had won wars. Nobody accepts that proposal instantly, unless they have their own agenda. So, what's yours, Constance Hills? Why really agree to marry a dying king? Because I've been keeping you alive for 3 months. Because I'm already pregnant with your heirs, through magic I can't explain. Because I know one of your council is murdering you, and I have 3 days to break the curse before it kills us both. Because you're right, I said instead. I'm an Omega cleaner with no prospects. This is the best offer I'm likely to get, even if it comes with an expiration date. Practical. Depressing, but practical. He coughed again, more black blood staining his lips.
I'm sorry.
You deserve better than being married for political convenience to someone who's dying. Everyone deserves better than what they get, I replied, moving to help him before catching myself. Couldn't reveal my healing abilities yet. Not while the council might be watching. You should rest before the ceremony. I'll rest when I'm dead. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. A few more hours won't make a difference. They might actually. If I could get him alone, use my healing magic to stabilize him through the wedding, buy us time to implement whatever plan we'd need to survive the next 3 days. Stop that, Brett said suddenly. Stop what? Looking at me like you're calculating whether I'll survive until evening. I've seen that look on battlefield healers. You're not as powerless as you pretend to be, are you? My heart stopped. I'm an Omega cleaner, Your Majesty. I don't have any power. You also didn't flinch when I grabbed you, didn't panic when I proposed, and you're standing in my blood right now without showing any distress. His golden eyes narrowed. Most Omegas would be overwhelmed by alpha distress pheromones. You're completely unaffected. Why? Because I've been exposed to your dying alpha energy for 3 months while healing you. Because I'm the High Priestess's daughter, trained to resist magical influence. because I'm not actually the powerless nobody you think I am. Shock, I said. I'm in shock from the proposal, and everything's feeling very distant right now. Possible.
He didn't sound convinced.
Or you're lying, and we're both going to regret this marriage for very different reasons than I initially thought. You're paranoid. I'm dying mysteriously, and someone in my council is probably responsible. Paranoia is justified. He moved toward the door, each step obviously painful. I'll see you at the ceremony, wife-to-be. Try not to murder me before the vows. I'd hate to give the council that satisfaction. No promises, I said, meaning it more than he could possibly understand. He actually laughed at that, then coughed more blood, and the brief moment of levity shattered. After he left, I stood alone in the throne room, staring at the blood-burning holes in marble, feeling the weight of what I just agreed to settle on my shoulders like chains. I was going to marry the Alpha King in front of witnesses that included his murder. I was already pregnant with his heirs through magical conception that shouldn't be possible. And I had 3 days to break an ancient curse, identify the killer, and survive whatever assassination attempts were about to come. This was either the bravest or stupidest thing I'd ever done. Probably both. I returned to my cleaning, scrubbing the Alpha King's blood from marble floors, and tried not to think about how soon it might be my blood staining these stones instead. The wedding ceremony happened in the palace temple exactly 6 hours after Brett's proposal, which barely gave me time to process what I'd agreed to, let alone prepare for it. A servant found me in the cleaning quarters and handed me a dress. Simple white silk, probably intended for some other purpose, but repurposed for this rushed wedding. It fit poorly, tight across my chest and loose everywhere else, making me look even smaller and more insignificant than usual.
Perfect.
The more harmless I appeared, the less attention the council would pay to me until I was ready to act. The king requests your presence in the temple, the servant said, her tone suggesting she couldn't quite believe she was delivering wedding summons to an Omega cleaner. Elder Tobias will officiate. Please don't be late. His Majesty is unwell. Unwell. Diplomatic way of saying he was dying and might not survive long enough to complete the ceremony. I followed her through palace corridors I'd cleaned 1,000 times, but never walked as anything except invisible staff. Now, dressed in white and heading toward my own wedding, I felt exposed, like every shadow hid watchers, every corner concealed threats. The temple was small by royal standards, intimate space for family ceremonies rather than state functions. Maybe 20 witnesses were present. The 5 council elders, essential palace staff, a few guards, and High Priestess Mariah herself, summoned on short notice to bless the union. My mother stood near the altar in her ceremonial robes, her expression perfectly neutral as I entered. We'd never acknowledged our relationship publicly, couldn't, not without destroying her position and confirming the scandal. But I saw the concern in her eyes, the question. Are you sure about this?
Too late now.
I'd already committed. Brett waited at the altar in formal military dress, standing at attention despite obviously being in pain. His golden eyes tracked my approach, and I felt his assessment like a physical touch, still trying to figure out who I really was, what I was hiding. You came, he said as I reached his side. Did you think I'd run? Considered it possible. This is a terrible deal for you. It's a terrible deal for both of us, I corrected. At least we're suffering equally. He actually smiled at that, brief and genuine before another cough sent him gripping the altar for support. Black veins were visible at his collar now, the curse progressing visibly, running out of time. Elder Tobias cleared his throat. Shall we begin? His Majesty is eager to complete the ceremony. Yes, Brett managed. Let's get me married before I die. Very romantic. Most romantic deathbed wedding I've ever attended. I agreed, earning startled looks from several witnesses who clearly expected more deference from an Omega bride. The ceremony itself was brief, traditional vows stripped to essentials, no elaborate rituals or political performance. Just two people making promises neither expected to keep very long. Do you, Brett Pearson, Alpha King of the United Territories, take this woman as your mate and queen?
I do.
His voice was steady despite everything. And do you, Constance Hills, take this man as your mate and king? I do, I said, meaning it in ways neither the priest nor anyone else in this temple understood. Then, by the power vested in me by the moon goddess and the laws of this kingdom, I pronounce you married. Elder Tobias gestured to my mother. High Priestess, if you would bless the union? Mariah stepped forward, her priestess mask perfect. May the moon goddess watch over this bond, she said formally, placing her hands on both our heads. May she grant you strength, wisdom, and... She stopped mid-blessing, her eyes widening in shock as her priestess senses touched the curse wrapped around Brett and recognized the dark magic for what it was. And worse, recognized the healing magic I'd been using to fight it. Recognized the soul bond I'd accidentally created. Recognized the twins already growing inside me. She knew. In that single moment of contact, my mother knew everything. May she grant you the strength to fight darkness wherever it hides. Mariah continued smoothly, her voice never wavering even as her eyes met mine with desperate urgency. May your bond be unbreakable against all threats. She pulled her hands back and stepped away, but not before squeezing my shoulder in a gesture that looked like blessing but felt like warning. The ceremony is complete, Elder Tobias announced. His Majesty and Queen Constance are wed. May their union bring stability to the kingdom. Polite applause from the witnesses. I caught Elder Corrin watching with calculating satisfaction, the military advisor pleased with how neatly this had worked out. Brett would die, I'd be disposed of, and whoever Corrin planned to put on the throne next would be grateful for his strategic maneuvering.
Except none of that was going to happen.
Because I had no intention of being disposed of, Brett wasn't going to die if I could help it, and Corrin was going to pay for 3 months of torture inflicted through dark magic. You may kiss your bride, your majesty, Elder Tobias said, finishing the ceremony. Brett looked at me, question in his eyes. We barely knew each other. This whole wedding was political convenience and desperation. Kissing seemed absurd under the circumstances. Might as well, I said. We're already married. Can't make this weirder. Challenge accepted, Brett murmured and kissed me. The moment our lips touched, power exploded through the bond. Not just the standard mate connection. This was something unprecedented. My healing magic recognizing his alpha dominance, his soul touching mine, the twins' presence suddenly visible to him through our completed connection. Brett pulled back, shock written across his face. You're pregnant, I finished quietly, knowing he'd just felt what I'd been hiding. With twins. Yours. Conceived through magic during healing. I'll explain everything later, but right now we have witnesses and you're about to collapse. I'm really not, he protested, then immediately proved me wrong by swaying dangerously. I caught him before he fell, my small frame somehow supporting his much larger one as healing magic automatically flooded through our contact. Around us, witnesses gasped. The sight of a tiny Omega Queen holding up the Alpha King was striking enough, but the silver light suddenly emanating from my hands as I healed him was unmistakable. She's a healer, someone whispered. Priestess magic, another voice said with awe. Elder Corrin's expression shifted from satisfaction to fury.
Impossible.
Omegas can't. I'm the High Priestess's daughter, I said clearly, done with hiding now that the bond was complete and everyone could see the magic anyway. Trained in temple healing arts. I've been keeping His Majesty alive for 3 months while investigating who cursed him. And I know one of you is responsible. The temple erupted in chaos. Guards drew weapons. Council members shouted denials. Mariah moved to my side, her priestess authority radiating through the space. My daughter speaks truth, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. The Alpha King bears blood-binding curse. Ancient dark magic that requires priestess-level knowledge to cast. Someone in this room has been murdering him slowly for months. Preposterous, Elder Corin said, but his hand went to the ring on his finger, brief, instinctive movement that only someone watching for it would catch. I caught it, and I recognized the magical signature emanating from that ring, the same dark energy I'd been fighting every night while healing Brett. It's Corin, I said, pointing directly at the military advisor. The ring. It's the curse anchor. Every eye turned to the elder. For a moment, he considered denying it. Then his expression shifted from feigned innocence to cold calculation. Even if that were true, he said carefully, removing the ring won't break the binding. The curse is woven too deeply into His Majesty's life force. Destroying the anchor would kill him faster than leaving it intact. You're trapped, little healer. Save him and kill him, or leave him to die slowly. No winning moves. There's always a winning move, Brett said, having recovered enough to stand on his own despite my healing. You just have to be willing to pay the cost. Constance, can you break the binding if I survive the removal? Maybe, I admitted. If I pour enough healing magic in fast enough, if the bond supports it, if the twins' power helps. Too many ifs, Corin interrupted. You'll kill him. Better to accept the inevitable and let him die with dignity rather than torn apart by a healer's failed attempt. I'd rather die fighting than accept murder with dignity, Brett said coldly. Guards, take Elder Corin into custody. Charge, treason, attempted regicide, and use of forbidden dark magic. You can't prove. I don't need to prove it. I'm Alpha King. I say you're guilty, and that's sufficient. Brett's command voice made even Corin step back. Take his ring.
Carefully.
Don't let it touch anyone else. Guards moved to obey, but Corin was faster. He twisted the ring on his finger and spoke a word in the old language, activation phrase for curse magic. The blood binding surged with sudden vicious intensity, dark magic responding to its master's command. Brett screamed, collapsing as the curse tried to consume him all at once instead of the slow death Corin had planned. I reacted on instinct, dropping to my knees beside Brett and slamming my hands onto his chest. Healing magic poured out of me in a flood. Not the careful, measured doses I'd been using for months, but everything I had. Silver light blazed from my hands, burning away the darkness. You'll kill him, Corin shouted. The binding is too strong. Your healing will tear him apart. Then we die together, I snarled, feeling the twins' magic join mine. Unprecedented power from unborn heirs adding their strength to the fight. Better than dying separately, because you wanted a different king on the throne. Through our bond, I felt Brett's consciousness, felt his absolute trust that I could save him, felt his determination to survive this, felt his shock at discovering what our marriage truly meant. Help me, I sent through our connection. I can't do this alone. Your alpha dominance. I need it to fight the curse from inside, while I attack from outside. Tell me what to do, Brett responded immediately. Find the curse in your heart and refuse it. Just refuse. Command it to leave. Alpha dominance against dark magic. It might work.
Might?
Better than definitely dying. I felt his mental laugh even through the agony. You're terrifying and I married you. Best decision I ever made. Then his alpha power surged, commanding presence directed inward instead of outward, ordering the curse to release its hold. It wasn't supposed to work. Alpha dominance didn't affect magic. But combined with my healing flooding through the bond, with the twins' unprecedented power, with Mariah adding her priestess magic to support her daughter's desperate attempt, somehow, impossibly, the curse began to break. The dark magic screamed as we tore it away from Brett's heart. Corin staggered, the backlash of his broken curse hitting him through the ring he still wore. The anchor object cracked, black smoke pouring from the fractured gem. No! Corin grabbed for the ring, trying to maintain the curse despite everything. I served this kingdom faithfully for 40 years. I won't let some Omega bastard and her dying king destroy what I've built. You built nothing but murder and treason, Mariah said coldly, her priestess magic forming visible shields around Brett and me. And you used temple secrets to do it. That alone deserves execution. The ring shattered completely. The curse broke with it, dark magic dissipating in a rush of fetid air and Corin's agonized screaming. Brett gasped, drawing his first curse-free breath in months. The black veins retreated from his skin. His golden eyes cleared, power returning in a rush that made him glow with alpha dominance. I'm not dying, he said with wonder and fury. Moon Goddess, I'm actually not dying. Don't sound so surprised, I managed, pulling my hands back from his chest. I'm an excellent healer. You're terrifying, he corrected, pulling me into a kiss that was nothing like the ceremonial one earlier. This was claiming, grateful, desperate, real. When we finally broke apart, Corin was unconscious on the temple floor. The guards had secured him, and every witness was staring at us with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Well, Elder Vivian said into the stunned silence, that was the most dramatic wedding I've ever attended. And the most effective, Elder Helena added, though she looked pale. I suppose this means we'll need to revise succession plans. You suppose correctly, Brett said, standing with my help. My wife just saved my life, exposed a traitor in the council, and oh yes, is pregnant with my twin heirs who apparently have unprecedented magical power. Any objections to her remaining as queen? No one dared object. Not with Brett fully healthy, not with my healing abilities proven, not with Mariah standing beside us radiating priestess authority. Excellent, Brett continued. Then let's finish this wedding properly. Someone find food that isn't poisoned, wine that's been verified safe, and a bedchamber that's been thoroughly checked for additional assassination attempts. I'm going to celebrate surviving my wedding night by actually surviving. Romantic as ever, I murmured. You married me for my charm. I married you because you were dying and I was already pregnant with your heirs. Even more romantic. Despite everything, the assassination attempts, the revealed traitor, the broken curse, the public exposure of my identity, I found myself laughing. We'd survived. Against every odd, through impossible circumstances, we'd actually survived. Now we just had to figure out how to rule a kingdom together when we barely knew each other, and I was pregnant with magic twins who were going to reshape supernatural power structures. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, we were alive, married, and our enemies were defeated. Tonight was for celebrating survival. Curse broken. Traitor exposed. And those twins just used unborn magic to help save their father. Brett went from dying to discovering his nobody. Wife is the most powerful healer alive and already pregnant with his heirs. Hit subscribe because we've still got a long gist of political fallout, twin birth drama, and Constance proving she's the most dangerous queen the kingdom has ever seen. The palace was chaos in the wake of Corin's exposure and arrest. Council members scrambled to distance themselves from the disgraced elder, investigations launched into who else might have been complicit, and security doubled around both Brett and me as everyone realized assassination attempts might not be finished. I spent the first full day of my marriage being interrogated by Elder Vivian and Elder Sebastian about my background, my training, my relationship with the High Priestess, and how exactly I'd managed to keep the Alpha King alive for 3 months without anyone noticing. You've been working as a palace cleaner for 4 years, Sebastian said, his spymaster mind cataloging every detail. During that time, you had access to restricted areas, private council meetings, personal chambers. What else did you observe? Elder Helena has been embezzling kingdom funds, I said bluntly, tired of political games. She's got hidden accounts in 3 foreign territories, falsified trade records, and about 6 million gold missing from the treasury. I documented everything while investigating the curse. Helena went pale. That's you can't prove. I have copies of your ledgers, transaction records, and correspondence with foreign bankers. I'd spent 4 years being invisible, which meant people ignored me while discussing incriminating details. You want to challenge my claims? We can bring the evidence to public trial. Or you can resign quietly, return the stolen funds, and disappear before the Alpha King decides execution is more appropriate. The finance minister looked at Brett, who just smiled coldly. My wife makes an excellent point. What do you think, Helena? Public trial or quiet resignation? Resignation, she said immediately. I'll return the funds. Good choice. Brett turned to the remaining council members. Anyone else want to confess crimes before my terrifying Omega Queen exposes them? She apparently knows all of your secrets, and I'm inclined to let her weaponize that information. Silence. Frightened. Calculating silence. Excellent. Then, let's discuss how we're moving forward. Brett leaned back in his chair. We were in the council chamber for this interrogation, him sitting on his throne and me standing beside it like I belonged there. Elder Corin is being tried for treason and attempted regicide. Elder Helena is resigning due to embezzlement. That leaves 3 of you, and I'm not particularly confident in your loyalty after discovering one of my advisors spent months murdering me. Your Majesty, Elder Tobias said carefully, we understand your suspicion. But not all of us were complicit. Prove it, I interrupted. You're the chief priest. You commune with the moon goddess regularly. You should have sensed dark magic infecting the Alpha King.
Why didn't you?
I'm not trained in curse detection, Tobias admitted. My abilities are spiritual, not magical. I sensed something wrong but couldn't identify the specific threat. Fair enough. I'd suspected Tobias was genuine. His reaction during the wedding had been too shocked to be faked. What about you, Elder Vivian? You negotiate with foreign territories. Did you notice anything suspicious about Corin's behavior? Only in retrospect, the diplomatic liaison said. He'd been positioning certain military leaders for promotion, restructuring command chains in ways that would facilitate his chosen successor taking power after His Majesty's death. I thought it was standard succession planning, not conspiracy. Also probably true. Vivian was pragmatic, not treasonous. That left Sebastian, the spy master who knew everyone's secrets, who discovered my identity within a week of my arrival 4 years ago, who'd chosen to stay silent about it for reasons I still didn't fully understand. You knew who I was, I said directly. The moment I arrived at the palace, you figured out I was the High Priestess's daughter. Why didn't you expose me? Because I was curious what you were doing, Sebastian said with complete honesty. A trained healer taking a job as a cleaner? That's either desperate hiding or deliberate infiltration. I wanted to know before deciding how to use the information. And now I'm glad I kept quiet. You saved the Alpha King's life and exposed a traitor. That's valuable service to the kingdom. Sebastian smiled slightly. Plus, threatening me with blackmail material seems redundant when you've just proven you can kill people with healing magic. I'm motivated to stay loyal. I didn't kill Corin with healing magic, I corrected. I killed a curse with healing magic. Corin's alive and will face trial. Disappointing. I prefer more permanent solutions to treason. He'll be executed after trial, Brett said. The law requires it for attempted regicide. You'll get your permanent solution, just with proper legal proceedings first. Acceptable. Sebastian turned his attention back to me. What about the pregnancy? Twins conceived through magical soul touch. That's unprecedented. What do we tell the kingdom? The truth, I said. That the queen used healing magic to save the Alpha King, that soul-deep healing created spiritual bond, and that bond manifested physically as conception. It's not standard biology, but it's not entirely shocking given the circumstances. It's going to terrify the nobility, Vivian pointed out. Twin heirs with both alpha dominance and healing magic? That's an unprecedented power combination. Some will see it as divine blessing. Others will see it as threat to the existing hierarchy. Let them be terrified, Brett said. Constance broke an ancient curse, exposed a traitor, and is carrying my heirs. Anyone who questions her legitimacy can challenge me directly. Your Majesty, Tobias said carefully, perhaps we should be more diplomatic. The kingdom has just weathered a near catastrophe. We need stability, not more conflict. Stability comes from strength, not appeasement, I countered. The council tried to murder the Alpha King. The nobility needs to understand that similar attempts will fail because the queen is not a convenient political pawn. She's the most powerful healer in the kingdom, and she will destroy anyone who threatens her mate or her children. You sound like an alpha, Vivian observed. I sound like someone who spent 3 months watching my mate die slowly while investigating which of you was responsible. I met each council member's eyes. I was ready to kill whoever cursed him. Constance, the invisible Omega cleaner, would have stayed hidden and let the Alpha King die. Constance the Queen is done being invisible and will burn down anyone who threatens what's mine. Brett smiled with something that looked like pride. Terrifying, he said affectionately. I married someone absolutely terrifying. You married the only person willing to save your life, I corrected. Try to remember that when I'm being impossible during pregnancy. I promise nothing. The council meeting eventually ended with new security protocols, revised advisory structures, and everyone very clear that threatening the queen was suicide. I escaped to our private chambers, which were now genuinely private since Brett was no longer dying, and I was no longer pretending to be insignificant. Mariah found me there an hour later, using her high priestess authority to bypass guards who would have stopped anyone else. We need to talk, my mother said, closing the door firmly behind her. About how I just revealed my identity to the entire council. About how I'm pregnant with magic twins. About how I broke a blood curse in front of witnesses. I gestured broadly. Take your pick of topics. About all of it. Mariah sat across from me, her priestess mask finally dropping to reveal maternal concern. You were supposed to investigate quietly, discover the traitor, report back to me so I could handle it through proper channels. Instead, you married the Alpha King, got pregnant through magical conception, and exposed yourself publicly. What were you thinking? I was thinking he was dying and I was already pregnant, and I had 3 days to break the curse before it killed us both. I shot back. Subtle investigation became impossible when the situation accelerated. The magical conception alone is going to cause problems. Soul touch pregnancies are forbidden for exactly this reason. They create power combinations that destabilize hierarchies. Mariah's expression was troubled. Twins with both alpha and healer abilities? They're going to be fought over, targeted, seen as threats or prizes depending on political positions. They're my children. Anyone who threatens them dies. You sound like a wolf, not a healer. I'm both. I've always been both. I met my mother's eyes. You trained me to heal and to hide. But you also trained me to survive. This is what survival looks like when quiet hiding fails. Mariah was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and took my hand, rare gesture of affection from a woman who'd spent 22 years maintaining distance to protect us both. I'm proud of you, she said quietly, and terrified for you. Those emotions are not mutually exclusive. They really aren't, I agreed. I'm proud and terrified of myself. Brett was dying. Now he's healthy, but discovering his political convenience wife is actually the kingdom's most powerful healer who's already pregnant with his heirs. The nobility is going to hate me. The council is going to fear me. And I still don't know how to be queen. You saved the Alpha King's life and exposed a traitor on your wedding day. You're already better at being queen than most nobles who've trained their entire lives for the role. Mariah squeezed my hand. Trust your instincts. They've kept you alive this long. My instincts told me to marry a dying king I barely knew. And it worked out. Unconventionally, dangerously, but it worked. She stood, returning to high priestess formality. I'll support you however I can. Publicly as spiritual advisor, privately as your mother. The temple stands behind the queen. Thank you. I paused. Does this mean you're acknowledging me officially? Not officially. That would create more problems than it solves. Mariah smiled slightly, but perhaps less secretly than before.
You're the queen now.
People will question your background regardless of what we do or don't confirm. After she left, I sat alone in chambers that were both luxurious and alien, room designed for queens, not cleaners. My entire life had changed in less than 24 hours. Brett found me there at sunset, carrying a tray of food. The kitchen sent dinner. I verified personally that nothing's poisoned. How thoughtful of you to not let me be murdered on our second day of marriage. I try. He set the tray down and sat beside me. How are you doing? Actually doing, not political performance. Overwhelmed. Terrified. Pregnant with twins who apparently have unprecedented power. Trying not to think about how many ways this could still go wrong. I looked at him. How are you doing? You spent 3 months dying, and now you're healthy, but married to someone who is hiding literally everything about who she really is. I'm relieved to be alive. Grateful you saved me. Somewhat concerned that I married someone significantly more powerful and dangerous than I initially thought. He touched my face gently. But mostly I'm just trying to figure out if this is actually a marriage or just a strategic alliance for mutual survival. Can it be both? I suppose it has to be. We barely know each other, but we're bound by soul-deep magic and pregnant twins. Brett smiled slightly. Not exactly traditional courtship. We can do courtship backwards. Marriage, pregnancy, then dating. That's either genius or insane. Like I said, can it be both? He kissed me then, and it was different from the ceremonial wedding kiss or the post-curse-breaking claiming. This was exploration, curiosity, two people trying to figure out what their relationship actually was beneath all the political complexity and magical drama. I'm going to fall in love with you, Brett said when we finally pulled apart. Probably already halfway there given that you saved my life and are carrying my heirs. Just warning you in advance. I'm already in love with you, I admitted. 3 months of healing you every night, feeling your soul through the magic, watching you fight to survive. I didn't mean to fall for you, but I did. That's inconvenient. Extremely. Makes the strategic alliance complicated. We'll manage. He pulled me closer. We've survived assassination attempts and ancient curses. We can survive being in love with each other. That might actually be harder. Probably, he agreed. But we're committed now. Married, bonded, expecting twins. Might as well try to make it work. Most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'll work on better material once the kingdom stops trying to kill us. We spent the evening like that, eating dinner, talking about everything and nothing, trying to build an actual relationship out of desperate political marriage and magical circumstances. It was awkward and sincere, and gave me hope that maybe this could actually work. Maybe I could be queen and healer and mate and mother simultaneously. Maybe we could build something real out of the chaos. Maybe, despite everything, we'd found exactly what we both needed in the last place either of us expected. Or maybe I was being naively optimistic and tomorrow would bring new disasters. Probably both. They're falling in love, while expecting magic twins. And half the kingdom still wants her dead. Constance went from invisible cleaner to terrifying queen in 24 hours, and Brett is very aware he married someone more dangerous than anticipated. Hit subscribe because the noble families are about to meet their new queen, and it's going to be messy. The formal presentation to the noble families happened 3 days after the wedding, which gave me exactly 0 time to prepare for facing 200 aristocrats who'd spent generations perfecting the art of social warfare. You'll be fine, Brett assured me as servants helped me into elaborate queen's regalia. The dress was heavy silk in royal colors, designed to project authority I absolutely did not feel. Just be yourself. Myself is a cleaner who hid her identity for 4 years. I don't think that's the image we want to project. Be the version of yourself who broke an ancient curse and exposed a traitor on her wedding day, he corrected. That version is terrifying enough to make the nobility think twice about causing problems. Or make them think I'm a threat to be eliminated. Also possible. Try to minimize the death threats during your first official appearance. The presentation took place in the Grand Hall, massive chamber designed specifically for intimidation, with vaulted ceilings, marble columns, and enough space for every noble family in the 5 territories to gather and judge their new queen. I walked in beside Brett, feeling every eye track my movement. The whispers started immediately. That's the queen? She looks like a child. I heard she was a cleaner before the marriage. High priestess's bastard daughter, according to the rumors. Pregnant already. Some say it's magical conception. Twin heirs with healing abilities. Unprecedented. She's dangerous. We should be careful. At least they recognized I was dangerous. That was something. Brett led me to the dual thrones at the hall's front, his slightly elevated, mine equal beside it rather than the traditional lower positioning for queens. Statement of equal authority that would irritate every traditionalist in the room. Perfect. Noble families of the United Territories. Brett's voice carried absolute command, silencing the whispers. I present Queen Constance, my mate, and Luna, mother of my heirs, savior of my life. You will show her the respect due to her position and abilities, or you will answer to me personally for the disrespect. Are we clear? Murmurs of acknowledgement. Not enthusiastic, but at least nominally respectful. The Queen will now receive your formal presentations, Brett continued. Approach the throne with proper deference and state your allegiance. This was the part I'd been dreading. One by one, the noble families would approach, offer formal loyalty oaths, and assess whether I was worthy of their respect. Most would be polite to my face while plotting behind my back. Some would be openly hostile. A few might actually mean their oaths. The first family approached, Lord Nathaniel Frost and his daughter Victoria, rulers of the Western Territories. Victoria was the one who'd been proposed as a political marriage candidate before Brett chose me instead. Her expression suggested she was still bitter about that. Your Majesties, Lord Nathaniel bowed correctly. House Frost pledges loyalty to the crown and congratulations on your union. Thank you, Lord Frost, I said, keeping my voice steady. Your loyalty is appreciated. Victoria's turn. She curtsied with perfect form, but her eyes were calculating. Your Majesty, she addressed me directly. I understand you're a healer. Such useful skills for a queen. Caring for the sick and injured must come naturally to someone of your background. The insult was subtle but clear. Caring for the sick equals cleaner's work equals you're beneath this position. Indeed, I replied smoothly. My healing abilities allowed me to save His Majesty's life when all the royal physicians failed. One might say caring for the sick is the most important skill a queen can possess when her mate is being murdered by traitors. Direct hit. Victoria's expression flickered with surprise that I'd countered so quickly. Of course, Your Majesty, she recovered. We're all grateful for the Alpha King's recovery. They retreated, and the next family approached. And the next. And the next. Hours of this. Nobles assessing, judging, testing how much disrespect I'd tolerate. I tolerated none of it. Every subtle insult was countered. Every questioning look was met with steady authority. Every attempt to classify me as Omega who got lucky was shut down with reminders that I'd broken ancient curses and exposed council traitors. By the time we were halfway through the presentations, the whispers had shifted. She's sharper than she looks. Not intimidated at all. Interesting. Those healing abilities make her valuable beyond politics. The twins will shift power dynamics completely. We need to decide quickly, support her or oppose her. Neutral isn't an option. Then Lady Seraphina of the Eastern Territories approached, the other marriage candidate who'd been rejected. She was beautiful in the calculated way of women who used appearance as a political weapon, blonde and elegant, and radiating aristocratic contempt. Your Majesties, she said, curtsying to Brett first, then turning to me with barely concealed disdain. Queen Constance. What an unexpected rise to power. From temple charity to palace throne. Quite the journey. Indeed, I said. Though I find rise to power implies I sought this position. In reality, I was cleaning blood from the throne room when His Majesty proposed. Not exactly ambitious social climbing. And yet here you are, wearing the crown. Serafina smiled coldly. Pregnant with heirs conceived through magic, wielding healing abilities that make you invaluable. One might think you planned this outcome despite your claims of innocence. The accusation hung in the air that I deliberately manipulated circumstances to become queen. One might think that. I agreed. One would be wrong, but thinking is free. However, suggesting the queen manipulated sacred mate bonds and divine conception is dangerously close to accusing her of dark magic. I'd be careful about where that line of reasoning leads, Lady Serafina. Her expression shifted, realized she'd gone too far in public. I merely meant to express surprise at your good fortune, Your Majesty. No offense intended. None taken, I said, though we both knew that was a lie. Your loyalty to the crown is noted. Serafina retreated, but her eyes promised this wasn't finished. I just made an enemy of one of the most powerful nobles in the Eastern Territories. Brett leaned close once she was out of hearing range. You're collecting rivals quickly. They were going to be rivals regardless of how I handled the presentations. At least this way they know I fight back. Fair point. Though now, we definitely need to increase security. The presentations continued. Some families were genuinely welcoming, particularly those from lower nobility who saw my rise from cleaner to queen as hopeful precedent. Others were calculatedly neutral, waiting to see which side proved stronger before committing. A few were openly hostile, barely concealing their belief that an Omega with no aristocratic background had no business on the throne. Then came the moment I'd been dreading most, the Corrin family presentation. Elder Corrin was currently imprisoned awaiting trial, but his family still held significant territory and political influence. His son, Lord Damien Corrin, approached the throne with his wife and 3 children, all of them wearing expressions mixing grief, shame, and fury. Your Majesties, Damien said stiffly. House Corrin acknowledges the crown's authority. Not pledges loyalty. Acknowledges authority. Careful distinction that allowed them to avoid actually swearing allegiance. Lord Damien, Brett said coldly. Your father attempted to murder me through dark magic. He conspired with foreign enemies, broke sacred laws, and nearly destroyed the kingdom's stability. Your family's acknowledgement of authority is insufficient. I require explicit loyalty oaths or explicit renunciation of your territorial holdings. Choose. Damien's jaw tightened. My father's crimes are his own. Our family should not be punished for his individual failings. Your family benefited from his position for decades, I pointed out. Territories granted, political appointments, trade advantages, all built on your father's council influence. If you want to keep those benefits, you swear loyalty. If you refuse to swear, you lose the privileges that came from his treason. You have no right. She has every right, Brett interrupted. She's the queen.
Her word is law.
Swear loyalty to her personally, or lose everything your family gained from your father's position. Those are your only options. The Corrin family exchanged looks, calculation, fury, desperate assessment of which choice served their interests. We swear loyalty, Damien finally said through gritted teeth, kneeling before my throne rather than Brett's. House Corrin acknowledges Queen Constance as rightful Luna and pledges service to the crown she represents. It was the most hostile loyalty oath I'd ever witnessed. But it was still an oath, spoken publicly, binding them to serve rather than oppose. Your loyalty is accepted, I said formally. May you serve the kingdom more honorably than your father did. The Corrin family retreated, and I felt the weight of what had just happened. I'd forced one of the most powerful families in the kingdom to swear personal loyalty to me, the bastard cleaner queen they obviously despised. They were going to cause problems.
Soon.
But at least now they'd be committing treason if they acted against me directly. The presentations finally ended after 6 hours of social warfare disguised as formal introduction. I was exhausted, my feet hurt from standing so long, and the twins were making their presence known through increasingly uncomfortable pressure on my midsection. "You survived," Brett observed once we'd escaped to private chambers. "I made enemies of half the nobility. You established yourself as queen who won't be pushed around by aristocratic politics. That's worth making enemies." He helped me out of the heavy formal dress. "Though we should probably prepare for increased assassination attempts." Wonderful. I was hoping for more murder plots. It's all part of the queen experience. You get a crown, political power, and people constantly trying to kill you. Very glamorous. "I want a refund." "Too late. You're stuck being queen now." He kissed my forehead. "But you're terrifyingly good at it, so at least you're succeeding while being miserable." Most encouraging thing you've ever said to me. That night, alone in our chambers, I felt the twins move for the first time. Distinct flutter of movement that shouldn't be possible, yet given how recently they'd been conceived. But magical pregnancy followed its own timeline. "They're active," I told Brett, placing his hand on my abdomen so he could feel. "They're strong," he corrected, wonder in his voice as he felt his heirs moving. "Moon goddess, they're already so strong. They're going to be terrifying. Twin heirs with alpha dominance and healing magic, born to parents who barely know each other but are bonded through soul-deep connection." I looked at him. "Are you ready for that? For children who will reshape the kingdom's power structure just by existing?" "No," he admitted honestly. But I wasn't ready for any of this. Not the curse, not the traitor, not marrying the most powerful healer in the kingdom who is already secretly pregnant with my children. "I've been improvising since you broke the curse. Might as well keep improvising through childbirth and unprecedented magical heirs." "You're very adaptable." "I'm very terrified and pretending to be confident. There's a difference." "That's what I'm doing too," I admitted. Terrified and faking it. Then we're well matched. He pulled me close, careful of the growing twins. "We'll figure this out together. The kingdom, the politics, the children, all of it. We survived the curse. We can survive anything else that comes." That's either inspiring or delusional. Probably both. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who'd married for survival and were slowly discovering they might actually want to stay married for other reasons. It was far from perfect. We still had enemies plotting against us, nobles who wanted me dead, and magical twins who were going to cause unprecedented chaos. But we were building something real out of the political convenience of marriage. And that was worth fighting for. The blood moon ceremony was scheduled for 2 weeks after my formal presentation to the nobility, sacred ritual where the Alpha King renewed his vows to the moon goddess and the kingdom reaffirmed its commitment to divine service. It was also, according to Elder Sebastian's intelligence, the perfect opportunity for assassination. 3 separate plots uncovered so far, the spymaster reported during our private war council. Lady Seraphina's people want to poison your ceremonial wine. The Corrin family hired rogues to attack during the procession. And someone, I haven't identified who yet, is planning to use the ceremony itself as cover for dark magic assault. Of course they are, I said wearily. Can't have a religious ceremony without multiple murder attempts. Very traditional. The ceremony requires both of you to be vulnerable, Elder Tobias explained, looking uncomfortable about his own religious traditions being weaponized. You'll be unarmed, wearing ceremonial robes, standing in sacred circle where violence is forbidden. Perfect target if someone's willing to violate sacred law. Which our enemies clearly are, Brett added. So we need to turn their assassination attempts against them. Use the ceremony as trap to expose whoever's coordinating these plots. You want to use yourselves as bait, Vivian said flatly. Again. Your Majesties, with respect, that strategy only works if you survive the bait phase. Constance survived 3 months of keeping me alive while investigating my murder, Brett pointed out. She can handle herself. I'm also visibly pregnant now, I added. The twins were growing at an accelerated rate. I looked 5 months along despite the conception being only weeks ago. Attacking me during a sacred ceremony means attacking a pregnant queen carrying heirs. That's going to trigger protective instincts from a lot of nobles who might otherwise stay neutral. You want to weaponize the pregnancy, Sebastian said with something like approval. Make the assassination attempt so shocking that neutral families are forced to choose sides.
Exactly.
Right now, half the nobility is waiting to see if I survive before committing loyalty. A dramatic attack during Blood Moon ceremony makes staying neutral impossible. They either support the queen, or they support people who tried to murder her and her unborn children during religious ritual. Risky, Vivian observed. If something goes wrong, I die, Brett dies, the twins die, and the kingdom descends into civil war. I finished. But that's going to happen eventually anyway if we don't force our enemies into the open. Better to control the timing and location of the confrontation. She's right, Brett agreed. Our enemies are circling, waiting for opportunity. Let's give them an opportunity and then destroy them when they take it. Elder Tobias looked pained. I understand the strategy, but using a sacred ceremony as a battlefield feels blasphemous. The moon goddess put me in position to save the Alpha King, I said gently. She blessed our union, sanctified the twins' conception, and apparently wants us alive and ruling. I don't think she'll object to us defending ourselves during her ceremony. You're remarkably confident about divine intentions. I'm remarkably confident that the alternative is death, and divine mercy is more likely than assassin mercy. We spent hours planning. Identified which families were likely hostile, which might be swayed by dramatic revelation, which could be trusted to support us. Positioned loyalist guards throughout the ceremony space disguised as religious attendants. Prepared contingencies for every assassination method Sebastian had uncovered. And I practiced with my mother, learning how to use healing magic offensively rather than just defensively. If someone attacked during the ceremony, I needed to be able to fight back without revealing too much of my abilities too soon. Channel the magic through emotion, Mariah instructed during our private training sessions. Healing responds to will, but it can be weaponized through rage or protective fury. Let your mama instincts fuel the power. Anyone threatening your children becomes legitimate target for aggressive healing. Aggressive healing sounds like an oxymoron. Only if you're being gentle. Healing magic can burn as easily as it can soothe. Fire purifies, after all. She demonstrated, her priestess magic manifesting as silver flames that looked beautiful but felt searingly hot. You have more power than I do. If you channel it properly, you could incinerate anyone who threatens you. That's terrifying. You're terrifying. Might as well weaponize it. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. The twins were active. My healing senses were screaming warnings about impending danger, and every shadow felt like it concealed assassins. Brett found me on the balcony overlooking the palace gardens, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn cold. Can't sleep either? He asked, joining me. Too many things that could go wrong tomorrow. Too many enemies, too many ways for the plan to fail. I leaned against him. What if we're wrong? What if exposing ourselves like this just gets us killed? Then we die together, which is better than dying separately while they pick off whoever survives first. He wrapped his arms around me and the twins. But we're not going to die. Because you're the most powerful healer alive. I'm a tactical genius, and our enemies are overconfident. They think pregnant Omega Queen is a vulnerable target. They have no idea you're actually an apex predator waiting to strike. I don't feel like an apex predator. I feel like a terrified woman who's 4 weeks pregnant but looks 5 months along and is about to use herself as bait to expose traitors. You can be both. Terrified and dangerous. He kissed my temple. I love you. I know this started as political convenience and a magical accident, but somewhere between the curse breaking and the noble presentations, I fell completely in love with you. I love you too, I admitted. Which makes tomorrow even more terrifying because now I have something to lose beyond just my life. We'll survive. We have to. The twins deserve to be born. The kingdom needs us. And I refuse to die before we've had at least one normal day as a married couple. Define normal. A day where nobody tries to kill us, and we get to just be together without political crisis. That sounds mythical. We'll make it real, he promised. After tomorrow. After we expose the traitors and secure our position. Then we get normal days. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think we'd survive the blood moon ceremony and actually have a future together. But my healing senses were screaming danger, and I'd learned to trust those instincts. Tomorrow was going to be catastrophic. I just hoped we'd survive to see the aftermath. The blood moon ceremony began at midnight, when the moon turned red and sacred magic peaked. 200 nobles gathered in the ceremonial circle, all of them dressed in ritual white, all of them carrying sacred candles meant to honor the moon goddess. At the circle's center stood the altar, and before it, Brett and I wore ceremonial robes that left us completely vulnerable. No armor, no weapons, no protection beyond our own abilities and the guards hidden among the attendants. Elder Tobias began the ritual, his voice carrying through the night. We gather under the blood moon to renew our covenant with the moon goddess. Alpha King Brett Pearson, do you vow to serve your people with honor, strength, and wisdom? I so vow, Brett said, his voice steady. Queen Constance, do you vow to support your mate, nurture the kingdom, and use your gifts in service of the greater good? I so vow, I said, feeling the magic in the circle respond to the oath. Then, by the power of the blood moon and the moon goddess's blessing, the attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Poisoned arrows from the noble section, Lady Seraphina's people trying to make it look like a tragic accident. Rogue wolves bursting through the perimeter, Corrin family's hired assassins, going for direct assault. And dark magic erupts from the altar itself, the third plot Sebastian had warned about but couldn't identify. I reacted on instinct. Healing magic exploded outward in a shield that caught the arrows, burning them to ash before they could reach us. Brett shifted partially, his alpha dominance making the rogue wolves hesitate just long enough for our hidden guards to engage them. But the dark magic was the real threat. It wasn't trying to kill us directly. It was trying to corrupt the ceremony itself, turn the sacred ritual into curse that would bind both Brett and the kingdom to whoever controlled the magic. And I recognized the signature, blood binding. The same curse that had nearly killed Brett months ago, now being cast openly during sacred ceremony. Who's doing this? Brett demanded, his alpha command forcing truth. Who dares use dark magic in the moon goddess's presence? A figure stepped forward from the nobles, not someone I'd suspected, not someone who'd shown any previous hostility. Lord Damien Corrin, the son of the imprisoned traitor who'd sworn loyalty to me 2 weeks ago. I dare, he said, dark magic swirling around his hands. My father failed to kill you through subtlety. I won't make the same mistake. This blood binding will consume you both, along with those monstrous twins you're carrying. And when you're gone, someone worthy will finally rule. You broke a sacred oath, I said, fury building. Violated religious ceremony. Attacked pregnant queen carrying heirs. Do you understand what you've unleashed? I understand that you're an abomination who doesn't deserve the throne. Damien's magic surged, the blood binding trying to wrap around us. Witch. Take your cursed spawn with you. That was a mistake. Because calling my children cursed, threatening them during sacred ceremonies, trying to murder them before they were even born, that triggered every protective mama instinct I possessed. And my mother had been right. Healing magic channeled through protective fury was absolutely devastating. I let my power explode outward, not healing anymore but burning with silver fire that made the blood moon above us pulse in recognition. The dark magic Damien had cast evaporated like morning mist, and the force of my power knocked him backwards 10 feet. "You threaten my children," I said, my voice resonating with something beyond human. The moon goddess herself seemed to speak through me, divine fury at the violation of sacred space. "You broke oath sworn on sacred ground. You used dark magic during blood moon ceremony. Your crimes against divine law are absolute." "You can't. I'm noble. You have no authority. I'm queen, blessed by the moon goddess, carrying heirs who will reshape this kingdom." I advanced on him, silver fire dancing across my skin. "And you just proved exactly why the nobility needs to be reminded that rank means nothing without honor." The healing magic, channeled through protective rage, wrapped around Damien like shackles made of burning light. He screamed as the power consumed his dark magic, purified his curse attempt, and left him gasping on the ceremonial ground. "The queen has spoken," Elder Tobias said, his priest's voice carrying divine authority. Lord Damien Corrin violated sacred ceremony, broke sworn oath, and attempted murder during religious ritual. His crimes are witnessed by the moon goddess herself. What punishment does your majesty decree? I could have killed him. The power was there, burning through my hands, eager to eliminate the threat completely. But Brett placed his hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Not death he sent through our bond. That makes him a martyr. Strip his power, exile his family, make them examples of what happens to oathbreakers. He was right. Death was mercy compared to what we could actually do. Lord Damien Corrin, you are stripped of title, lands, and all noble privilege, I declared, my voice carrying to every noble in the circle. Your family is exiled from all 5 territories, your wealth confiscated, your name erased from records of honor. You will live as rogue wolves, without pack or protection, forever marked as oathbreakers who violated sacred ceremony. You can't. I can, and I have. The moon goddess herself witnessed your crimes. Challenge this judgment and face divine wrath as well as legal consequences. Damien looked around desperately, seeking support from the other nobles. Found none. Lady Seraphina and her conspirators had already been seized by guards during the chaos. Arrows traced back to their position, assassination attempt fully exposed. The Corrin family's hired rogues were dead or captured, their attack having failed miserably. And 200 noble witnesses had just watched the Queen channel divine power to defend herself and her unborn children against dark magic assault during sacred ceremony. The message was very clear: threaten the Queen and face power that made noble rank irrelevant. The blood moon ceremony is concluded, Elder Tobias announced. The moon goddess has blessed this reign, sanctified these heirs, and demonstrated her favor toward Queen Constance. May all who serve the kingdom recognize divine will when it manifests before them. It was less religious blessing and more political statement wrapped in spiritual authority. But it worked. One by one, the noble families approached, not to swear loyalty again, but to kneel before me specifically, acknowledging that I was queen not just through marriage, but through divine approval demonstrated in the most dramatic way possible. By dawn, every family had knelt. Even the ones who clearly still resented my rise to power couldn't argue with moon goddess manifestation and successful defense against multiple assassination attempts. I'd survived the bait phase of our plan. We'd exposed the remaining traitors, eliminated immediate threats, and forced the nobility to recognize my authority. And I'd done it while pregnant, wearing ceremonial robes, with nothing but healing magic weaponized through protective mama rage. Terrifying, Brett said afterward, once we'd finally escaped to privacy. You were absolutely terrifying, and the nobles will never forget it. I almost killed him, I admitted.
Damien.
When he called the twins cursed spawn, I wanted to incinerate him completely. But you didn't. You stripped his power instead, which was smarter and sends better message. Brett pulled me close. You're going to be incredible mother, you know. Any child who tries to misbehave will face your protective fury and immediately regret their choices. That's not how parenting works. It's how your parenting is going to work. Weaponized love, terrifying affection, disciplinary healing magic. You're impossible. I'm in love with the most powerful queen in 5 kingdoms who just proved she can defend herself, me, and our unborn children against multiple assassination attempts during sacred ceremony. He kissed me thoroughly. Impossible seems appropriate given the circumstances. The twins chose that moment to move, pressing against my abdomen in what almost felt like approval. They agreed with you, I told Brett. Our children have excellent judgment. We spent the rest of dawn discussing next steps, trials for the exposed conspirators, reforms to prevent future assassination attempts, plans for securing the kingdom before the twins were born. But mostly we just held each other, 2 people who'd survived yet another impossible situation and were slowly building something real out of the chaos. We weren't perfect. We barely knew each other despite being married and expecting children. We had enemies still plotting, political crises waiting to explode, and twins who were going to cause unprecedented complications. But we were surviving. Together. And that was enough. For now. The blood moon ceremony just became a battle between divine power and dark magic. Constance channeled the moon goddess herself, turned healing into weapons, and made every noble in the kingdom kneel. Plus those twins are active, and Damien learned that threatening magical babies is a very bad life choice. Hit subscribe because we're only at chapter 5 and still have the actual birth to survive, plus whatever chaos twins with alpha dominance and healing magic are going to cause. The trials of Lady Seraphina and the Corn conspirators lasted 3 weeks and became the most watched political spectacle in recent kingdom history. Every noble family sent representatives. Every territory wanted to witness how we'd handle treason against the crown, and the common people filled the streets outside the palace to hear updates. I presided over the trials alongside Brett, my pregnancy now impossible to hide, 6 weeks along but looking 7 months pregnant, the twins growing at a rate that terrified the royal physicians and fascinated my mother. They're feeding on your healing magic, Mariah explained during one of her examinations. Every time you use your power, they absorb some of it, growing stronger. At this rate, you'll give birth within another month rather than the standard 9-month gestation. A month, I repeated flatly. I'm going to have unprecedented magical twins in a month, while simultaneously presiding over treason trials and trying to stabilize a kingdom that just watched me incinerate someone's dark magic during a sacred ceremony. You're going to be busy, she agreed. Try not to stress too much. It's bad for the babies. Everything is bad for the babies at this point. Assassination attempts, political intrigue, their mother channeling divine fury. These children are being born into chaos. They're being born into a kingdom you're reshaping through that chaos. That's not nothing. The first trial was Lady Seraphina, who'd coordinated the poisoned arrows during the blood moon ceremony. She entered the courtroom with perfect aristocratic composure, dressed in expensive silks and radiating offended dignity. Lady Seraphina of the Eastern Territories, Brett announced formally, his alpha command filling the chamber. You are charged with conspiracy to commit regicide, attempted murder of the queen and royal heirs, and violation of sacred ceremony. How do you plead? Not guilty, your majesty, Seraphina said with icy calm. I maintain that the arrows were tragic accident, not coordinated assault. My house has served the crown faithfully for generations. These accusations are politically motivated attacks by a queen who sees threats everywhere. The arrows were coated with poison specifically designed to kill alphas and disrupt magical pregnancies, I pointed out, having examined the evidence personally. That's not an accident. That's a coordinated assassination requiring significant magical knowledge and resources. So you claim. But where's your proof? Arrows could have been poisoned by anyone, launched by anyone. Without direct evidence linking me to the weapons, you're accusing a noble house based on suspicion rather than fact. She had a point. The arrows had been destroyed during my defensive blast, and the archers had fled in the chaos. We had circumstantial evidence and testimony from captured rogues, but nothing directly tying Serafina to the attempt. Elder Sebastian, I called the spy master. Present your investigation findings. Sebastian stood, carrying documentation that made Serafina's composure finally crack. Lady Serafina's estate purchased wolfsbane, silver nitrate, and crystallized moonlight 3 weeks before the blood moon ceremony. These ingredients are specifically used to create anti-alpha poison with anti-healing properties. The merchant who sold them has testified that Lady Serafina personally placed the order, using her house seal to verify payment. That merchant is lying for political advantage, Serafina protested. The merchant is a loyal subject who kept detailed records of every transaction, including copies of your signed order forms. Sebastian produced the documents. Your handwriting verified by 3 separate experts. Your house seal authenticated by the Royal Archives. And your payment traced through 4 different accounts trying to hide the transaction trail. Serafina's face went pale. She'd been caught not just in attempted murder, but in provably documented attempted murder. Additionally, Sebastian continued, we found correspondence between Lady Serafina and the Corrin family discussing removing the Omega threat and restoring proper order to the kingdom. These letters, combined with the physical evidence of poison purchase, create clear pattern of conspiracy. I want counsel, Serafina said desperately. I have right to legal representation before. You have right to nothing, Brett interrupted coldly. You tried to murder my pregnant mate during sacred ceremony. You violated divine law, territorial law, and basic moral decency. The evidence is overwhelming. The only question is your sentence. Death, I said clearly, my voice carrying through the courtroom. Attempted murder of queen and heirs during religious ritual. The law is explicit about capital punishment for those crimes. Gasps rippled through the assembled nobles. Executing a high-ranking aristocrat for treason was rare. Usually they were exiled or imprisoned to avoid inflaming their family's supporters. But I was done being gentle with people who tried to kill my children. Your Majesty, Elder Vivian spoke carefully, perhaps exile would be more diplomatic. Lady Serafina's family is powerful in the Eastern Territories. Executing her could create succession problems. Her family tried to murder me and my unborn children, I interrupted. If that creates succession problems, good. Let it serve as warning that threatening the crown has consequences aristocratic birth can't protect against. The Queen has spoken, Brett affirmed. Lady Serafina of the Eastern Territories, you are found guilty of all charges. Sentence: death by execution, to be carried out immediately. Your family's territories are forfeit to the crown, your wealth confiscated, your house name struck from noble records. May the moon goddess have mercy on your soul, since this court will not. Serafina was dragged from the courtroom screaming about injustice and political persecution. Within the hour, she was dead, her execution witnessed by representatives from every noble family as warning about what happened to traitors. The remaining trials followed similar patterns. Damien Corrin's co-conspirators were identified, tried, and sentenced to various punishments ranging from exile to execution, depending on their involvement level. The hired rogues were executed immediately. They'd been caught in the act and had no noble privilege to complicate their sentencing. By the end of the 3rd week, we'd executed 7 nobles, exiled 12 families, and confiscated enough wealth to fund kingdom operations for 5 years. The message was very clear. The new regime did not tolerate threats to the crown, and noble birth provided no immunity from consequences. You're building a reputation, Elder Vivian observed after the final trial concluded. The nobles are calling you the Iron Queen. Some mean it as compliment, others as warning. Let them warn each other, I said. Anyone who needs warning about not committing treason probably shouldn't be in positions of power anyway. Fair point. Though we should discuss what happens when you give birth. The twins will be vulnerable, and you'll be temporarily weakened from childbirth. Our enemies will see that as opportunity. Then we make sure our enemies are too terrified to attempt anything, Brett said. Increase security, position loyalist guards, and make it very clear that attacking newborn heirs is suicide. Also, I added, the twins aren't going to be typical vulnerable infants. They're magical, growing at an accelerated rate, and will probably manifest abilities immediately. Anyone who tries to harm them will face both their parents' fury and their own self-defense. You're very confident about unborn children's abilities. I'm very aware that these children have been contributing their power to my healing magic for weeks. They're active participants in their own survival. I don't think that stops once they're born. Vivian looked between us. You're both insane. You know that, right? Planning a military strategy around the abilities of infants who haven't been born yet. We're adapting to unprecedented circumstances, Brett corrected. Our enemies expect vulnerable royal babies they can use as political leverage. They're going to be very surprised when they encounter magical heirs who can defend themselves. If you say so, Your Majesties. That night, alone in our chambers, I felt the twins moving with increasing vigor. They were running out of space, their accelerated growth making my body struggle to accommodate them. They're coming soon, I told Brett, placing his hand on my abdomen so he could feel the movement. Days, maybe a week. Not the month my mother predicted. Are you ready? Absolutely not. I'm terrified, exhausted, and my body feels like it's being torn apart from inside. I met his eyes. But they're coming anyway, so I'd better figure out how to be ready. We'll figure out together, he promised. You've survived everything else. Curses, assassination attempts, political trials. You can survive childbirth. Childbirth might actually be worse than assassination attempts. At least with assassins, I can fight back. You can fight back against childbirth too. Just differently. That's not how biology works. It's how your biology works. You channel moon goddess power and incinerate dark magic. Normal rules don't apply. He had a point. Nothing about this pregnancy had been normal. Why would the birth be any different? The contraction started 3 days later, during a council meeting about trade negotiations with the Southern Territories. One moment I was listening to Elder Tobias explain import tariffs. The next I was doubled over with pain that felt like my entire abdomen was being squeezed in a vice. Constance. Brett was at my side immediately, his alpha instincts sensing my distress. Labor, I gasped. The twins are coming. Right now. Chaos erupted. Council members scattered to summon physicians, and my mother. Guards formed protective perimeter. Brett lifted me carefully, carrying me toward our chambers while I tried to breathe through contractions that were coming far too fast and far too intense. This isn't normal. I managed between pains. Labor should be gradual. This is something's wrong. The twins are magic, Brett reminded me, moving as quickly as he dared. Nothing about them has been normal. Why would their birth be different? Because it hurts, and I'd like at least one thing about this pregnancy to be standard. O moon goddess. Another contraction. Worse than before. I felt my healing magic surge in response, trying to ease the pain, but the twins' power was interfering. They were using my magic to fuel their own birth, pulling on my abilities to facilitate their entry into the world. They were actively participating in their own delivery, which was fascinating and terrifying and hurt more than anything I'd ever experienced. We're almost there, Brett said, kicking open our chamber doors. Healers are coming. Your mother is coming. You're going to be fine. Define fine, he gasped. Because I'm pretty sure fine doesn't include magical twins clawing their way out while using my power to accelerate the process. Mariah burst into the chamber, her high priestess robes billowing as she immediately took charge. Everyone out except the king. I need space to work. The guards and servants fled. Brett stayed, holding my hand while my mother examined me with both physical and magical senses. "They're coming fast," she confirmed. "Probably within the hour. The twins are using your healing magic to facilitate birth, essentially performing their own delivery from inside. It's unprecedented but not dangerous if we manage it correctly." "It feels dangerous," I said through gritted teeth. "Pain doesn't mean danger. It just means pain." Mariah began setting up her healing instruments. "I need you to channel your magic with them instead of against them. Let them pull on your power, work with their efforts rather than resisting. They know what they're doing. They're unborn infants. How do they know what they're doing? They're magical heirs conceived through divine intervention. Trust them." Another contraction. I stopped fighting and let my healing magic flow freely, letting the twins pull on it however they needed. Immediately the pain shifted, still intense, but more purposeful. Less like being torn apart and more like being reshaped from within. "That's it," Mariah encouraged. "Work with them. They're strong constants. Let them use that strength." The next hour was a blur of pain, magic, and Brett's steady presence as anchor keeping me grounded. I felt the twins moving, positioning themselves, using my power to ease their passage into the world. Then, finally, blessedly, the first baby emerged with a cry that carried alpha command despite being seconds old. "Son," Mariah announced, placing the infant on my chest. "Healthy, strong, and already projecting dominance. Well done." I looked down at my son. Tiny, perfect, his eyes already open and glowing with golden alpha energy. He stopped crying the moment he made contact with my skin, settling against me with satisfied sound. "One more," Mariah said. "The second is coming." The daughter followed minutes later, smaller than her brother, quieter, but her eyes glowed silver with healing magic the moment she entered the world. "Daughter," Mariah said with awe. "Healer-born. She's going to be powerful, Constance. Maybe more powerful than you." "That's terrifying," I managed, exhausted and overwhelmed. "That's perfect," Brett corrected, looking at both his children with wonder. "They're perfect. You're perfect. I don't have words." "Try terrifying again. That word keeps coming up." He laughed, kissing my forehead. "Terrifying works. Our children are already projecting power. We're going to have very interesting lives." The twins settled against me, one on each side, their small hands gripping my fingers with surprising strength. Through our bond, I felt Brett's absolute love and wonder, felt the twins' contentment, felt the beginning of our family forming from the chaos of the past months. We'd survived curses, assassination attempts, and political trials. We'd exposed traitors, executed enemies, and reshaped kingdom power structures. And now we had two magical heirs who were going to continue that reshaping just by existing. "Welcome to the world," I told my children quietly. "Your timing is terrible, your powers are unprecedented, and you're going to cause so much chaos. I already love you both desperately." They made small sounds of agreement, their baby magic reaching for mine, creating family bond that felt unbreakable. We were pack. We were family. We were king and queen and heirs reshaping the kingdom through sheer stubborn survival. And somehow, despite everything, it was exactly right. The twins are born. Son with alpha dominance. Daughter with healing magic. Both terrifyingly powerful from birth. Plus they used Constance's power to deliver themselves, which is metal AF. Hit subscribe because we still have 2 chapters left, and raising magical twin heirs in a kingdom full of enemies is going to be wild. The kingdom celebrated the birth of the royal twins with 3 days of official festivities, public parties, and every noble family sending elaborate gifts they hoped would curry favor with the new regime. I spent those 3 days learning that magical infants were even more complicated than magical pregnancies. "They're not sleeping," I told Brett on the second night, exhausted from trying to manage 2 newborns who seemed to have no concept of appropriate rest schedules. Normal babies sleep 18 hours a day. Our sleep may be 6 and spend the rest of the time actively using magic to explore their surroundings. They're curious, Brett said, watching our son. We'd named him Kieran, float a toy across his crib using alpha dominance projected as telekinesis. That's good. Curious children become intelligent adults. Curious magical children become security nightmares, I corrected. Yesterday our daughter. Lyra, Brett interrupted. Her name is Lyra. Use it. Yesterday Lyra healed a guard's injured arm through the nursery wall. She wasn't even in the same room. She just sensed his pain and fixed it automatically. I gestured to where our daughter was currently making the entire nursery glow with silver light. They're 3 days old and already have power most adults never achieve. How do we even parent that? Very carefully and with significant magical backup? Brett suggested. Your mother helped raise you while you were developing healing abilities. Maybe she has advice. Mariah did have advice, most of it variations on suppress nothing and prepare for chaos. Magical children need to use their abilities, she explained during one of her frequent visits. Suppressing them causes developmental problems and power backfire. You're going to have to let them practice, which means accepting that they'll accidentally heal or dominate everything around them while learning control. They're infants, I protested. How do we teach control to beings who don't understand language yet? The same way wolves teach pups. Through pack dynamics, demonstration, and letting them make mistakes in controlled environments. She picked up Lyra, who immediately tried to heal a perceived health issue that didn't actually exist.
See?
She's already trying to fix things. That's good instinct. We just redirect it toward appropriate targets. What's an appropriate target for infant healing magic? Plants, mostly. They're alive, but not complex enough to be harmed by inexperienced healing. Let her practice on the gardens. Worst case, she makes them grow too fast, and we have to trim back excess. We set up a practice area in the palace gardens where the twins could safely experiment with their abilities. Kieran learned quickly that projecting dominance at flowers didn't accomplish anything useful. Lyra discovered she could accelerate plant growth, communicate with animals, and sense emotions from 50 feet away. By 2 weeks old, they were more powerful than most adult healers and alphas. By a month, they were starting to communicate, not with words, but through emotional projection that everyone nearby could feel. When Kieran was happy, the entire wing of the palace felt lighter. When Lyra was upset, every living thing within range sensed her distress. This is going to be complicated when they're teenagers, Brett observed, watching Kieran project alpha dominance that made adult guards instinctively submit despite him being an infant. Imagine these abilities combined with adolescent emotions. I'm trying not to think about it, I admitted. Right now I'm just trying to survive infancy. Future problems are future problems. But future problems arrived faster than expected. The assassination attempt came when the twins were 6 weeks old enough to have developed distinct personalities, but still young enough to be vulnerable if someone actually got past our security. The attacker was clever. Used a compromised servant who'd passed all our loyalty tests, someone we'd never suspected. She got into the nursery during the brief window when the guards rotated shifts, carrying a knife coated with the same anti-alpha, anti-healing poison that had been used during the blood moon ceremony. She made it 3 steps toward the twins' cradles before Kieran sensed threat and reacted. The alpha command that erupted from the infant was unprecedented, raw, uncontrolled dominance that forced every wolf within 100 yards to freeze in instinctive submission. The servant collapsed, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to do anything except submit to the power radiating from a 6-week-old baby. Lyra reacted to her brother's distress by flooding the room with healing magic so intense it became painful, protective instinct manifesting as overwhelming force that made the servant scream as every cell in her body was simultaneously healed and purified. By the time Brett and I arrived, summoned by guards who'd felt the power surge, The attacker was unconscious but unharmed, and both twins were crying with the distinctive wail that meant, "We defended ourselves, but now we're scared and want parents." They protected themselves, I breathed, scooping up both children. Moon goddess, they're 6 weeks old, and they defended themselves. They're powerful, Brett corrected, examining the unconscious servant. More powerful than we realized. That alpha command would have brought me to my knees, and I'm trained to resist dominance. She had no chance. Who sent her? I demanded, my own protective instinct screaming. We'll find out, Brett promised. Sebastian is already interrogating her. Whoever coordinated this attempt is going to regret threatening our children. The interrogation revealed that Lady Victoria, Lord Nathaniel Frost's daughter, who'd been bitter about not being chosen as queen, had organized the attempt. She'd been slowly building a conspiracy since the trials ended, recruiting from families who resented our reforms and saw the twins as aberrations that needed to be eliminated. She's claiming the children are unnatural, Sebastian reported. That magical heirs with combined abilities violate divine law, that you're raising monsters who'll destroy the kingdom. She's actually convinced about 20 noble families to support her cause. 20 families, I repeated. 20 noble houses think my children are monsters that need to be killed. 20 noble houses that are about to learn why threatening the royal heirs is terminal mistake, Brett said coldly. Arrest them all. Every family that supported Victoria's conspiracy. Charge them with conspiracy to commit regicide and attempted murder of infants. Your Majesty, arresting 20 houses simultaneously will destabilize. I don't care about stability. I care about my children's safety. Brett's alpha command made Sebastian step back. Anyone who thinks murdering 6-week-old babies is acceptable political strategy doesn't deserve to keep their position, their wealth, or their lives. Arrest them. Try them. Execute the ones who are actively involved and exile the rest. The resulting purge was brutal. 15 nobles were executed for direct involvement in the assassination plot. The remaining families were stripped of titles and exiled to neutral territories where they could cause no further problems. Lady Victoria herself was brought before us in chains, defiant despite knowing her fate. You're raising abominations, she said, meeting my eyes without fear. Those children have too much power. They'll destroy the natural order, make alphas irrelevant, reshape the kingdom into something unrecognizable. I tried to stop that future. I regret nothing. You tried to murder infants, I said quietly, my fury cold and controlled. You violated every law, every moral principle, every basic standard of decency. And you did it because you're terrified of a future where power is based on ability rather than birth rank. I'm terrified of a future where Omega's rule and nobility means nothing. Then be terrified. Because that future is exactly what I'm building, and your attempt to stop it through infanticide has only made me more committed to the cause. I stood, projecting authority that made even Victoria flinch. Lady Victoria of the Western Territories, you are found guilty of conspiracy to murder royal heirs. Your sentence, public execution, carried out immediately, witnessed by every noble family as warning about what happens to those who threaten my children. The nobles will rebel. The nobles will remember that threatening the royal twins means facing both their parents' fury and the twins' own self-defense abilities. Brett's voice was iron. My son's alpha command brought adult guards to their knees at 6 weeks old. My daughter's healing magic can burn as easily as it can soothe. You didn't just fail to kill helpless infants, you failed to kill powerful heirs who defended themselves. That's the story the nobles will remember. Victoria was executed that afternoon. Her death was witnessed by representatives from every remaining noble family, all of them watching as the Iron Queen demonstrated that mercy had limits, and those limits were her children's safety. After the execution, Brett and I returned to the nursery, where both twins were napping peacefully, unaware of the political chaos their existence had caused. We can't keep executing everyone who threatens them, I said quietly, watching our children sleep. Eventually we'll run out of nobles and have no one left to govern territories. Then the nobles will learn to accept that the twins are the future, Brett replied. Every execution, every exile, every public demonstration of what happens to threats, it teaches the kingdom that this regime doesn't tolerate attacks on the heirs. Eventually, the lesson will stick. And if it doesn't, then we keep teaching until it does. I'm not going to let anyone harm our children because tradition says magical heirs are unnatural. They're powerful, unprecedented, and they're going to reshape the kingdom. The nobility can adapt or they can be replaced. Kieran chose that moment to wake up, his golden eyes opening with that unnerving awareness 6-week-olds shouldn't possess. He looked at me, then at Brett, then projected a wave of contentment that said clearly, "Parents here.
Safe now."
All good. They understand more than we realize, I observed. They understand everything, Brett corrected. They're just not old enough to express it verbally yet. Give them a few months and they'll probably be having full conversations despite being infants. That's terrifying. Everything about our children is terrifying. We should probably just embrace it. Lyra woke next, her silver eyes glowing as she sensed her brother's wakefulness. She projected her own contentment, and the nursery filled with the warm feeling of family, safety, love. We'd survived assassination attempts, political purges, and noble conspiracies. We'd executed traitors, exiled families, and made very clear that the royal heirs were untouchable. Our children were 6 weeks old and already had body counts through their self-defense abilities. They were going to grow up in a kingdom we were reshaping through violence and reform simultaneously. But they were safe. They were loved. And they were powerful enough to defend themselves when we couldn't be there. That was enough. It had to be enough. Because the alternative, trying to keep them hidden and powerless to satisfy traditionalists, would have been worse than any amount of political chaos their existence caused. I love you, I told both my children, holding them close. Your power terrifies me and your existence has caused more problems than anything else in my life. But I love you desperately, and I will destroy anyone who tries to harm you. They projected agreement, their baby magic wrapping around me in comfortable embrace that said, "Love you too. We'll protect you too. We're pack." We were pack. We were family. We were reshaping the kingdom one execution and one reform at a time. And somehow it was working. 6 months after the twins' birth, the kingdom had stabilized into a new normal that would have been unrecognizable a year earlier. The nobility had been fundamentally restructured. Families who'd proven loyal were elevated to positions of greater power, while those who'd resisted reform found themselves replaced by commoners who'd demonstrated competence and loyalty. Rank still mattered, but it was no longer the only thing that mattered. Omegas had legal protections that were actually enforced. Healers operated openly, without fear of persecution. And the royal twins were simultaneously beloved symbols of the new regime and terrifying reminders that power had shifted away from traditional hierarchies. Kieran and Lyra at 6 months old were more advanced than typical 2-year-olds, walking, communicating through emotional projection and simple words, using their abilities with increasing control. They'd accidentally healed 3 servants, dominated for guards into submission, and caused one minor diplomatic incident when a visiting foreign alpha insulted me and both children reacted by projecting enough combined power that the alpha left immediately and never returned. "They're protective," Brett said diplomatically when I worried about the incident. "That's good. Means they'll defend the kingdom when they're older." They're 6 months old, and they made an adult alpha flee in terror. That's not protective. That's terrifying. Why can't it be both? Fair point. Everything about our children was both protective and terrifying. The council had been rebuilt with new members who actually supported our reforms. Elder Tobias remained as religious advisor. He'd proven loyal throughout the chaos. Elder Vivian stayed as diplomatic liaison. Her pragmatic adaptation had been valuable. Sebastian remained as spymaster because no one else had his intelligence network or skill at uncovering conspiracies. But we'd added new voices. A former Omega healer named Iris, who understood the population we were trying to protect. A common-born military strategist named Thomas, who'd risen through ranks on merit rather than birth. And my mother, who'd officially acknowledged our relationship and now served as high priestess and royal advisor simultaneously. "You've reshaped the kingdom in 6 months," Mariah observed during one of our private meetings. "Some say it's an improvement. Others say it's a revolution disguised as reform. Can it be both?" I asked, echoing Brett's frequent response. "Apparently everything in your life is both things simultaneously." She smiled slightly. "I'm proud of you, terrified for your future, but proud of what you've built." That seems to be the theme. Pride and terror in equal measure. Welcome to parenthood. And leadership. And basically your entire existence. That evening, Brett and I stood on the palace balcony watching sunset over territories we'd fought so hard to protect and reshape. The twins were with their nursemaids. We'd finally found caregivers who could handle magical infants and weren't terrified by their abilities. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked Brett quietly. "Choosing me? I know this marriage started as desperate political convenience. If you'd known I was the High Priestess's daughter carrying your magical heirs, would you have still proposed?" "Absolutely," he said without hesitation. "If I'd known, I would have proposed even faster. You're the most powerful, terrifying, competent person I've ever met. You saved my life, reshaped my kingdom, and gave me heirs who are going to change the supernatural world. Why would I regret that? Because it's been 6 months of constant crisis. Assassination attempts, political purges, noble conspiracies. We've barely had any peaceful days." "We've had some," he argued. "Remember last week when no one tried to kill us for 3 entire days? That was nice. 3 days without murder attempts is our definition of peaceful. That's concerning. That's our life. Might as well embrace it." He pulled me close. "I love you. Genuinely, completely, not just because you're my fated mate or my queen or the mother of my children. I love you because you're terrifying and brilliant and you make me want to be better than I am." "I love you too," I admitted. "Even though you're impossible and your idea of romance is counting days without assassination attempts." "Hey, I also brought you flowers last week." "You brought me flowers that Lyra had healed into massive overgrowth because she was practicing her magic. They were 8 feet tall. Still counts as a romantic gesture." It really doesn't. We stood there in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd married out of desperation and built something real out of chaos. Our children were magical and terrifying. Our kingdom was still adjusting to radical reforms. Our enemies were defeated, but not eliminated entirely. But we were surviving. Together. And slowly, gradually, we were building the kingdom we'd both dreamed of, one where power came from ability rather than birth, where Omegas had protection rather than exploitation, where our children could grow up safely despite being unprecedented. "What happens now?" I asked. "We've survived the crisis period. The kingdom is stable. The twins are growing. What's next?" "Now we actually govern," Brett said. "Boring administrative work, policy implementation, diplomatic negotiations that don't end in executions. Normal ruling stuff. Sounds suspiciously peaceful. Give it time. Someone will try to kill us eventually. They always do." That's not reassuring. It's realistic. We've made enemies by reshaping power structures. Those enemies won't give up just because we've won the first battles. He kissed my forehead. "But we'll handle them the same way we've handled everything else, together, with terrifying efficiency and with magical children who can defend themselves when necessary." You make it sound almost manageable. It's absolutely not manageable. but we're good at improvising. Kieran and Lyra found us on the balcony a few minutes later, having escaped their nursemaids through judicious use of alpha dominance and healing-enhanced speed. They climbed onto the balcony railing with no fear of the drop, their 6-month-old bodies moving with coordination that should have been impossible. "Down," I said firmly, using my own maternal authority. "The railing is not for climbing." Both children projected innocent confusion. "But we can't fall. Powers would catch us. Powers are not substitutes for common sense."
Down. Now.
They climbed down, pouting in that way children do when they're caught doing something they know isn't allowed but don't fully understand why it's problematic. "They're going to be impossible teenagers," Brett observed. "They're already impossible infants. I'm trying not to think about adolescence." Fair strategy. One crisis at a time. We returned to the nursery together. All 4 of us, king and queen and heirs, family built from political convenience and magical accident and stubborn determination to survive everything thrown at us. The kingdom was still adjusting. Our enemies were still plotting. Our children were still growing into unprecedented power. But we were together. We were strong. And we were reshaping the supernatural world one reform, one battle, one ordinary family moment at a time. It wasn't the future anyone had predicted when Brett proposed to an insignificant cleaner who was secretly the kingdom's most powerful healer. But it was our future. Built through chaos, survived through determination, maintained through love that had started as convenience and became something real. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 1 year later. The anniversary celebration of our marriage was nothing like our wedding had been. No rushed vows, no assassination attempts, no breaking ancient curses in front of shocked witnesses. Instead, it was genuinely peaceful. A private dinner with just our family, the twins now 1-year-old, and communicating in full sentences despite that being developmentally impossible. They'd also mastered walking, running, climbing, and using their combined powers to cause creative chaos throughout the palace. "I learned a new thing today," Kieran announced proudly during dinner, his golden eyes bright with achievement. "I can make people happy by projecting good feelings." Elder Tobias said I was being therapeutically helpful when I made the sad guard feel better. "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely pleased that my son was using his empathic alpha abilities to help people rather than just dominate them. "I learned something too," Lyra added enthusiastically. "I can heal plants so they grow in specific shapes. Look." She held up a flower she'd apparently been carrying around all day, its petals arranged in perfect spiral pattern. "Mama, can I heal the whole garden? I want to make it pretty." "After dinner, I promised. And only the garden you're allowed to practice in. We're still recovering from last week when you accidentally healed the throne room plants into jungle." "That was an accident," Lyra protested. "I didn't know they'd grow that fast." "Now you know." Which means doing it again wouldn't be accident. It would be deliberate chaos. But fun chaos? Still chaos. "Eat your dinner." Brett watched this interaction with obvious amusement. 1 year married. 2 magical children who cause daily mayhem. A kingdom that's still adjusting to revolutionary reforms. And somehow this is the most peaceful our lives have been since we met. "Because no one has tried to kill us in almost 6 weeks, I said. "That's practically a vacation." "The nobles are learning," Mariah added. She joined us for the anniversary dinner, her high priestess formality relaxed in the privacy of family. They see Kieran's alpha dominance growing stronger daily. They see Lyra's healing abilities surpassing trained priestesses. They understand that the twins aren't just symbolic heirs. They're functional power that will enforce the new order when they come of age. "Which means our enemies are waiting," Sebastian added. He'd also been invited, his spymaster insights valuable even at family dinners. "Waiting for the children to show weakness, or for us to make mistakes, or for time to make everyone forget why the old order was eliminated." "Let them wait," Brett said firmly. "We didn't survive this long to become complacent. The kingdom is better than it was Omegas are protected, healers operate freely, power is based on competence rather than just birth rank. That's worth defending. It is, I agreed. Though I'd like to defend it without quite so many executions in the future. We've killed enough nobles to make the point. Now we need to maintain it through governance rather than violence. Boring but necessary, Brett acknowledged. Though I reserve the right to execute anyone who tries to harm our children. Obviously. That's non-negotiable. The dinner continued with comfortable family conversation, updates on kingdom politics, stories about the twins' latest adventures, plans for future reforms that would further solidify the changes we'd implemented. After dinner, we took the twins to their practice garden where they could safely experiment with their abilities. Kieran worked on projecting precise emotional states rather than overwhelming dominance. Lyra practiced healing individual flowers rather than accidentally growing jungles. They're so powerful, I said to Brett, watching our children glow with magical energy. Sometimes I forget they're only 1 year old. They seem so much older. They're growing into their abilities, he replied. By the time they're adults, they'll be the most powerful wolves in the kingdom, maybe in all 5 territories. That's terrifying and amazing simultaneously. Everything about them is terrifying and amazing simultaneously. It's their brand. Later that night, after the twins were finally asleep, a process that took significant effort given their energy levels, Brett and I stood together in our private chambers, reflecting on the year that had passed. 1 year ago, I was dying from a curse, and I proposed to a cleaner I thought was nobody, Brett said quietly. Now I'm healthy, bonded to the most powerful healer alive, raising magical twins, and ruling a kingdom we've fundamentally reshaped. It's been the strangest year of my life. 1 year ago, I was secretly healing you while investigating your murder, accidentally pregnant with your children through magical conception, terrified of being discovered. I replied. Now I'm queen, acknowledged daughter of the high priestess, mother of heirs who cause daily chaos. Also the strangest year of my life. Should we be concerned that strangest is our primary descriptor? Probably. But it's accurate. I turned to face him fully. I love you. Not just because you're my mate or my king or the father of my children. I love you because you gave me a choice when you could have taken it, because you supported my reforms even when they were politically inconvenient, because you're a good father and a good ruler, and you make me laugh even during crises. I love you too, Brett said, pulling me close. You saved my life, reshaped my kingdom, gave me perfect, terrifying children, and you make everything simultaneously harder and better. I wouldn't change any of it. Not even the part where I hid my identity for 4 years? Especially not that part. If you'd revealed yourself earlier, we might not have survived. Your strategic hiding kept you safe until the right moment. He kissed me softly. Happy anniversary, wife. Thank you for not letting me die, for bearing my heirs, and for building this impossible life with me. Happy anniversary, husband. Thank you for asking permission, for supporting my chaos, and for being worth the risk of revealing myself. We stood together in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd built something real out of desperate circumstances. The kingdom was still adjusting. Our enemies were still out there. Our children were still growing into unprecedented power. But we'd survived the first year. We'd reshaped the kingdom. We'd proven that an Omega Queen and her magical heirs could not just survive, but thrive despite every traditionalist expectation. And we'd done it together, king and queen, alpha and healer, 2 people who'd married for survival and discovered they genuinely wanted to stay married for everything else. It was messy and complicated and required constant vigilance against threats. But it was ours. Built through chaos, maintained through love, defended through whatever means necessary. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything we'd fought for. Everything we'd continue fighting for. Together. Always. And that's the complete story. Constance went from invisible cleaner, hiding her identity, to Iron Queen, reshaping the kingdom. Brett went from dying alpha king to healthy ruler with magical heirs. And those twins are 1 year old with power that makes adults nervous. The proposal while scrubbing blood from throne room. Breaking the curse on their wedding day. Constance channeling moon goddess fury during blood moon ceremony. The twins defending themselves at 6 weeks OLD. Magical babies causing chaos in the most adorable, terrifying way possible. What was your favorite moment? The curse breaking? The trials? The birth? The twins' self-defense abilities? Drop your favorites in the comments. Smash that like button if you loved this story of hidden power, desperate survival, and magical babies reshaping supernatural hierarchy. Subscribe for more werewolf romance with actual plot, character development, and the revolutionary idea that Omega Queens can be more terrifying than Alpha Kings. Thanks for following Constance and Brett's journey from deathbed marriage proposal to powerful family ruling a transformed kingdom. Remember, sometimes the person you think is nobody is actually the most dangerous being in the room. See you in the next story, where we'll have more supernatural drama, more unexpected power reveals, and definitely more magical children causing chaos.